What's up guys, this is Pseychie, and right before Christmas, I thought I'd show one more of one of my favorite weapons from the last crossover update. This time around, we will be taking a look at the Laser Glaive. This is the crossover weapon with Risk of Rain, which is one of my favorite roguelikes of all time. Well, I've only played the second one, but I believe this is the weapon that's used by the Huntress. And it functions almost exactly the same as it does in that game. Now, you'll have to excuse the footage for a little bit because I didn't lock out every single other ranged weapon except for the Laser Glaive, since I want a little bit more option to play with, and plus I don't think the Laser Glaive is a primary weapon, so it's mainly used as support. I will get the weapon in the next biome, so don't worry about that. And in the meantime, let's just enjoy some footage of shredding through the prisoners' quarters with the boomerang. And I believe this will be the first in a while. I think this is going to be a tactics showcase, if I remember correctly, which I'm pretty sure I am. That being said, the Laser Glaive can be played in both tactics and brutality, but I chose tactics since it's a ranged weapon, so it probably just made more sense that way. Tactics showcases are pretty rare, and I believe the last tactics weapon that I showcased was the Killing Deck, which was all the way from Queen and the Sea, so January. So all the way back in like early January or something. So I think this will be a pretty fresh look on the game as a whole. Tactics is actually my favorite class in the game. I think it's got the strongest weapons, but I also think it's also have the lower amount of variability as the other colors, since ranged weapons can only get so gimmicky. But anyways, we're gonna replace the boomerang with the Laser Glaive. I wanted to contest how good it is as a support, and obviously in this case I can't exactly replace the multiple knocks. So yeah, the Laser Glaive functions exactly the same as it does in Risk of Rain. It will bounce off an enemy if it hits a target, and then bounce back, and then bounce one more time until there are no targets left. So you'll see some pretty cool footage of me just doing some trick shots with the Laser Glaive here. And while it is very strong in crowd situations, single target it's not strong at all. So I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. If it's single target and you have no enemies to bounce off the glaive with, it's just pretty bad. But luckily in biomes you can control this situation, at least on 4/5 BC. Just get enemies to teleport to you after you run through a couple of them and it should be fine. Once the glaive gets started, it absolutely shreds. So here I'm gonna unlock the Ironclad outfit because I realized I haven't done that yet. And yeah, we're gonna see where this takes us. I believe I have 141 kills in the Arboretum, so that's basically a no-hit biome, I believe. We're also playing really dangerously with stats here, which is 110-1 on tactics, so I have very little health. And just like with all tactics builds, this run will get pretty dicey later on, especially near the end, but I won't spoil the surprise. So while I'm lifting this curse, let me just ramble a bit about the holidays. I hope everyone is staying safe and well. Personally, I got no plans for Christmas, and as we are approaching Christmas, I just realized that we are actually coming up on this channel's 2nd anniversary because the first upload ever was on December 26th, I believe, of 2020. So we've come a long way, and I also believe there will be a lot more to go. Next year we got the Castlevania update, I can't wait to play Hades 2, and there's also that new roguelike made by MiHoYo, which is the same game company as Genshin Impact. Don't judge me guys, and it's gonna be called Zenless Zone Zero, so pretty excited for that as well. I've definitely noticed a lot of transformations surrounding this channel ever since like a year ago, I generally wanted to branch out more into kind of general discussions about roguelikes and that kind of thing. If you guys are not yet aware, one of my last videos on analyzing a pay-to-win roguelike called Let It Die has probably reached an amount of popularity I did not expect for a while. If you haven't watched it already, make sure to check it out. I worked probably like a month on that since I had to play like 40 hours of the game. I wanted to give it a fair rating. I didn't really want to feel biased. Just because it's a live service game doesn't mean I'm not gonna give it a fair shot. And really seeing view numbers like that just kind of makes me wonder why I haven't branched out by now. Obviously, I'm still happy to do Dead Cells content. It's just that if theoretically I got enough views like the Let It Die video did for all of my videos, it's actually possible to make YouTube a full-time thing, which I highly doubt is actually possible. So if you haven't watched it already, I'm sure the idea of a live service roguelike will certainly interest you. And since that video was a review type of video, something I've always wanted to do is that reviewers should always give games a fair chance before putting up a verdict, because games, if you really think about it, functions really differently from movies and TV shows. Like if you review a TV show, it's expected that you have watched the whole thing. But for games, it's a bit more blurry, since a lot of games like Dead Cells, you technically only have to beat the game once, and you would have seen the ending. But the problem is, you won't see like the tens and hundreds of weapons in the game. You won't really kind of get to know the mechanics and combos until you play with each of the weapons slightly. And that's really kind of the thing, especially with roguelikes, because I could have played like 3 hours of Let It Die and then put up that video, but I wanted to give it a fair chance. It had a really distinctive art style, and I really wanted to see what it could do creatively to kind of explore what a live service roguelike could be. And I do want to state that I did actually enjoy parts of the game, so I wouldn't say it's all bad. Because in my honest opinion, a good review of something will never feel one-sided. Like if you see videos on YouTube saying like so-and-so TV show or video game is a masterpiece, I would still expect them to say like 1 or 2 things that criticizes something within the game. Because I honestly don't believe that a perfect game exists. So if you really like something, you have to think, what is something that the game can improve on? And if you see a video that's like harshly criticizing a game or just plainly hating on it, what's something good that can be said positively about the game? So that's kind of where I stand when it comes to game reviews, or I guess anything opinionated. But we're gonna get back to the run. As you can see, my stats here are still really risky. I was at 116-1 in tactics, so if I got hit, that would have been really, really bad. Gonna pick up a legendary endless bow and quiver since I wanted to see what it was capable of, and we're gonna pick up Reliable Corrupted Power. It has been nerfed in a recent patch, but I don't think it's bad at all. It's actually still really, really strong. It's just nowhere as broken as it was before, back when I made that video about Corrupted Power. Now, I don't believe I'm gonna keep the Corrupted Power for the whole game, but it's still a really good indicator of just how good it is still. So the game devs does this a little bit, and what I've noticed is that they'll nerf or buff a weapon, but they don't tell you like exactly how much they buffed or nerfed it, which I would have preferred to know the actual numbers, since I've noticed that a lot of nerfs have like straight out killed a weapon, and some nerfs are just not significant at all. Like, the weapon itself, it's still completely usable. It's just that the numbers have been tweaked just a little bit. So going forward, I'm definitely gonna be a little bit more open-minded about balance changes. Just because a weapon has been buffed or nerfed, as it says on the patch notes, I would still have to like test it out to know just how significant it is. So in this Mama Tick fight, I'm actually going to swap out the laser glaive for a shield I had in my backpack. Now, you might say that this is not a very good showcase if I'm not using the weapon that I'm showcasing, but in this case, I don't really have a choice since I play with the laser glaive a bit off camera, and on bosses, the weapon is just not good. Obviously, you're gonna see me fight the giant later on, and that is a boss that the glaive works well in, but sadly not in this case. So we're gonna shake things up a little bit. We're gonna go to the Fractured Shrines. So I don't think I've been here in a while. I wanted to showcase some of the biomes that I rarely go to, and the Fractured Shrines happens to be one of them. Now, I know I'm not playing the soundtrack, but the track for Fractured Shrines is actually one of my favorites in the whole game. I remember hearing it on the trailer, the very first trailer for Fractured Shrines, all the way back in like late 2020 or early 2021. and I only heard like the first 6 seconds of it, and I wanted to hear the whole thing like right away. So back then it was really hype for me, because one of the reasons is that I really wanted to hear the soundtrack. Like, it was just that good. So we're gonna get cursed here. I'm gonna do my best to not aggro that giant golem, and we're just gonna go somewhere else where we don't run into any kind of risks. Now, something I noticed about the Glaive is that it will pretty much travel in a straight line, and the range of it is pretty insane. The only problem is that since it doesn't have any drop time, you have to align yourself horizontally to where the enemy is, which is a little bit annoying, but once you get to do that, it would just auto-target any enemies nearby. So nothing to it, we're gonna lift the curse, and I'm gonna challenge the giant golem. So one thing I've also noticed is that the value of coming to the fractured shrines actually increased with the legendary update, because now you get 3 guaranteed legendaries. Well, at least one of them. You choose one from 3, but since legendaries work very differently than how it did before, some of those items can be very valuable, especially if you're looking forward to playing the legendary version of a specific item. So one other showcase I wanted to do that might come before the end of the year is a throwable object showcase, as I do think the weapon itself provides a lot of offensive options for heavy weapon, and it's also one of the more highly rated ones in my opinion. So I don't know when I'm gonna record the footage for that. It might be until after Christmas, or you guys might just get it before then. In addition to showcase videos, I also want to kind of do some video essays, just like what I did with the Let It Die video. So if there are any other fringe roguelikes or indie games you guys will want me to review, I'll be happy to check it out. And we're gonna continue onwards. This run has been going really smoothly actually. Been taking a little chip damage here and there, but nothing too major, and I still have all of my flasks. The laser glaive is doing really well. The only problem is you can't really guarantee that all of these situations will be good for the glaive. Like, there will be times where you come up against like a single enemy, and here you're gonna see me take a lot of damage, which is one of the demerits of running tactics, is that you take a lot of damage, especially from poison. And not only that, my off-color stats is really not helping me too much here. Not that I really mind, since the main stat is what I really care for, and some of those crabs will deflect the glaive, and it's going to interrupt the whole bounce process, but I didn't really mind it that much. So one more curse chest for the run, and this is probably one of the most nerve-wracking curses that you'll have to lift in the game, since I believe this is the only biome this late into the run that contains a guaranteed curse. And for a second there, I thought the Inquisitor shot was going to reach me, and I kind of panicked for a second, but everything turned out okay. So this is the stage of the game where you really start to see the laser glaive's potential. A lot of these weapons are mid-sized, so they'll probably die to 1 or 2 bounces of the glaive, which is exactly the type of positioning and situation that the glaive wants to be in. So the current combo right now, just pop Corrupted Power, pop the glaive, everything dies. I was really surprised they made this into a weapon, because this kind of ability really looks like it should have been a skill. I do believe the glaive is a skill in Risk of Rain, in the sense that you have a cooldown before you get to use it again. But in this case, other than a short windup, you can just spam it out. So ideally, in a situation, what you can do is to just throw the laser glaive and it just run away, because the glaive will take care of everything for you. The only problem is that, of course, in single target scenarios, you're gonna run into some trouble. In some cases, the glaive doesn't bounce to the target that you want to, so some enemies will still stay alive, but I found these occasions to be really rare. So I'm gonna do my best to take care of all the monsters without taking too much damage. In a tactics build, your run can go from 100 to 0 real fast. And the main reason why I went to the Forgotten Sepulcher is that it's the only way to route from Fractured Shrines to the Giant, I believe. So we're gonna go to the Giant, and this is where the glaive actually works. At least I think this is the only boss that the glaive actually works well in. So the glaive just bounces between the 2 fists, which allows me to easily kill the fists before they even do anything. Looking back on this footage, I do think the glaive has a maximum amount of bounces that it can do, and I don't think the devs will make it that good that the glaive can bounce an infinite amount of times. But I didn't really have too much problem with this giant fight. Sure, it doesn't really melt through the boss fight like some of the other more top tier tactics weapons, but it's still really solid. So this is where I wanted to try out something different. I thought that because the Servant's fight has 3 different targets, then theoretically the Laser Glaive will be really suited for that fight. You'll see a bit later, I was wrong, and I have mentioned this in my tier list. The Laser Glaive doesn't work that well in the Servant's fight. But I wanted to clear through this biome first. It's probably one of the biggest biomes in the game, if not the biggest. And we're gonna swap out Corrupted Power, because I think by this point, the Laser Glaive and the Quick Bow is good enough to pretty much 1 or 2 shot any monster in the game that Corrupted Power is not really needed. And even once we go into the boss fight, since the Glaive is going to be bouncing all the time, it wouldn't really benefit from Corrupted Power, so we can never go too wrong with the good old Tesla Coil. Of course, this late into the game, I really want a food shop, and one of the demerits of going to the Queen in the Sea areas is that there's no food shop. So you have to do this biome, you gotta do 2 more bosses back to back. So you would only come here in a run if you're looking for a challenge. And this is, I think, one of the reasons why Dead Cells DLC should not focus that much on endgame content. People that don't have that much time in the game won't really make it to the endgame that often, so you won't exactly get to show off all of these awesome boss fights. So I ultimately think, if you're a new player, you would probably want to buy Bad Seed first, because the early game that the DLC provides is a fresh amount of new content, as you'll definitely be able to go there all the time since it is in the early game. You'll see me do a huge blunder here and lose a big portion of my health. Definitely won't be the last blunder you see in the run though. And I really think this is one of the biomes where if you find the exit, you should just get out of there. You could explore the whole thing, and I think for most people it's going to have the incentivized biomes bonus. But I ultimately think that this late into the game, gold shouldn't matter that much to you anymore. It's good to have a couple of tens of thousands just lying around, but the tiers of items in the shops in the abandoned shipwreck is actually not even as high as the cavern, which is really surprising to me. So most of the runs, if I'm playing off camera, usually I just find the exit and then just get out of there. I don't think, because of just how dangerous this biome is, you really shouldn't stick that long. So we're gonna go into the final confrontations of the run. And we're gonna change our loadout just a little bit. In this case, I didn't know exactly what my strategy would be. I wanted to pick barbed tips, since I wanted to kind of use the quick bow to my advantage. I'm going to switch to the shield real quickly, since for the first 2 boss fights, you don't really get to bounce back between targets very often, and I would rather just have a way to parry. That being said, I'm also getting a little bit more used to the Lighthouse chase section. So Calliope, or Euterpe, anyways, the mace servant, only has like 3 attacks, well at least 3 directions that she can launch the wrecking ball in, is that she'll either launch it horizontally, vertically, or in a diagonal. So based on how you are aligned to her position, you can kind of predict where the wrecking ball is gonna land. So going into the Calliope fight, I really didn't have that much problem with it, so my turrets kind of saved me there from the ground slam attack, because I don't think I would have gone out of range of whatever that slam attack was. So that was kind of a lucky break. And then here I wanted to take out one of these servants before tackling Euterpe, which I think is a little bit more tedious to deal with, but ultimately I don't think it's as bad as the 3rd servant. So if you got turrets, this is probably the time to throw them down. I did manage to take out the Wrecking Ball servant before the 2nd boss fight, so shaved a little bit more health off for my troubles. And I do believe that any damage you deal to the servants during the chase will actually be deducted from their health total when you get to the actual boss fight, which is always nice. So against the bow, so you don't really have that many options, just run and hopefully you'll be able to dodge the arrows just fine. Encountering the 2nd boss fight, and for a second I briefly considered taking out my laser glaive, but ultimately I don't think it's gonna provide you with enough opportunities where the 2 of them will be in the same location, so I just didn't bother with it. Plus, once the bow servant is by herself, you can kind of just coast around the room and just fire off a couple shots here and there. So doing fine so far, and I managed to get through the first 2 servant fights unscathed. And part of that is thanks to the overpowered turrets that I have. I don't think I showed this on camera or showed it at all, but the legendary barnacle I have actually has a automatic poison inflicting affix. so it does bonus damage to poisoned enemies, which is very nice. And I think this really showcases how strong tactics builds can be. A big part of this is because of the turrets. You run this with support, and any combination with turrets will shred through a lot of things. Because if it's one thing I learned from hundreds of hours of playing Dead Cells, is that getting passive damage is just really helpful. So we're going up into the final boss fight, and then I'm going to switch up my strategies just a little bit. I'm gonna test out the laser glaive. And I realize this is a pretty dangerous thing to do, since I know the servants can hit pretty hard, especially on a tactics build. And I probably should have tested this in the training room, as I will quickly start to see that running the laser glaive in this fight is a pretty bad idea. Now, I don't think that it's completely impossible to land some bounces here and there. I definitely did so, as you can see, but I don't think that the servants will often be grouped up enough to let you hit them. And there were actually some rare cases where I hit the glaive, where the glaive bounces, it hits a target and then tries to auto-target to the bow servant, except it just fails. So there's also some auto-targeting issues. Theoretically, it works on paper that it should work pretty well in the servants fight, but sadly I don't think that's the case. Unless you look for those really rare moments where the servants are grouped up together and lets you actually bounce the glaives, it's just not really ideal. And then I'm gonna do probably one of the most hard blunders in my runs, is that you obviously should not heal if you're not safe. Again, this is kind of just the thing with tactics, you're always at the thrill of getting one-shotted. So only the bow servant left, and I think in this case, what I would have had to do is to just like keep calm and not do anything stupid. So I wanted to play it safe. I drank my last flask, so this means I am gonna have to go into the queen without a flask. So I was cringing pretty hard at my decisions here, but here I'm gonna try to play to my outs. I'm gonna pick up No Mercy, and I'm gonna pick up Dead Inside, which increases my health by 50%, but it also cuts my healing to half. Except in this case, the healing doesn't apply to me at all because I can't heal anyways. So sometimes when you're in a rough situation, you do have to just play to your outs. What's something that you can do to maximize your chances of winning? And I do definitely firmly believe that the Queen boss fight is considerably easier than the servants, especially with a tactics setup like this. What you can do is just throw down your turrets when she's doing the reality slices, and then your turrets just does passive damage. If you don't have turrets, then you're gonna have to get in close if you're running melee, or just run away if you're playing ranged. And obviously I didn't want to risk it anymore. While the glaive can be spammed out rather quickly, there is a small wind-up animation that the beheaded does, and in a fast-paced boss fight like this, you just don't want to do that. So No Mercy comes in clutch, kills the boss, and the run is over. It is complete. So definitely had a lot of close calls near the end there, but I managed to pull through somehow. This run really served as an experimentation of the laser glaive and its potential. I do think it is a very solid support weapon. I think Boomerang is still a much more solid all-around tactics support, but the laser glaive isn't bad at all. So enjoy the ending, and I will see you all, hopefully, in the next showcase. Have a good holidays!